definition, because I know so think of everything that Joe just said and definitely apply it to what I'm going to be talking about, but then like slightly go left. So what is time-based art? So time-based art, the definition is an artwork that has durational properties. So think film, sound, computer-generated interactives, iterative-based artworks, performance. What else have we got? Anything, kinetic works, so works with motors, neon works. So think movement, think electronics, analog media, digital media, but also performance, and this idea that in order to that the artwork needs to serve a function or a process of an action. So I realized I sort of put up, it was perfect after Joe, sort of this really aggressive anti-institution quote, but it really does, it is really applicable to this area. So I'll just start off with a little overview of what the time-based art project at the Art Gallery of New South Wales encompassed. So it started 3 years ago, and it really came from this acknowledgement from the institution that we had this collection of about 300 artworks that were exponentially growing by 20 to 30 acquisitions a year, which is a lot. That's on par with the Tate's acquisitions of this area. And that if we didn't do something as an institution, these kinds of artworks were heavily at risk of technological obsolescence, degradation, also a misunderstanding, which I'll get to that later. And so I was hired part-time for 3 days a week to first off do a survey. So institutions love to do a survey. So really what I came in to prove, risk versus significance. So what have we got? What don't we have in this case? And what are we going to lose? So that really started the ball rolling. In the next 3 years, we worked on kind of holistic overall strategies of collection management practice and really trying to pick at where the issues were and how we could develop and sort of change the institutional way of thinking. And so only in July this year, my position was made ongoing, which is the first formal position in Australia. And it's I guess it's important to note that currently in traditional conservation programs, we don't have a training program for time-based art conservation. It's not a specialization that you learn. And so you really have to come at it with independent research. And from my perspective, I had a background in tech and computer repairs and even TV sales, which funnily enough has sort of been really helpful. So this is just a really a traditional object in a 20th century institution. And so what you see here is the object in storage, and then it gets treated and conserved. And then that same object is wheeled into display, put on display for 3 months, and then it's wheeled back into our beautiful physical collection stores where everything's at 22 degrees Celsius and 50% relative humidity. And there it stays for the next 100 years until someone wants to see it again. Whereas a time-based artwork, this is what you get. So I love the USB with sticky tape. So this work is actually this work. So this is Manifesto. I don't know if you guys saw it. I think it was on display. There we go. 2016, 2017 by Julian Roosevelt. So it's a 13-channel installation work, high definition, 36 channels of sound. They all had to be networked. Our electrician spent 2 weeks in the ceiling networking enough Ethernet cable to get that beautiful sound that you would have experienced. And then in this image, the reason I put 2 images in is because you have 2 different iterations. There's 2 different ways it existed, and actually since then there's 5 or 6 different ways. So again, this is what we got. This is what it is. So my job as a conservator is not only to look at the traditional conservation ethics and decision-making, the digital preservation activities that go into the work, but also artist intent and the spatial parameters of a work and the acceptable change. So that's big. And really what it is this position, this role is asking a 20th century institution to be a 21st century one. And this is a fantastic book. And the idea of motion, in it, Boris Gross says that a museum used to be a space of contemplation, and now it's a space where things happen. And this is really evident for these kind of immersive, experimental, ephemeral, intangible, can I keep going, iterative works. So what I'm going to do, just to sort of talk about this in sort of a more tangible way, is to sort of investigate 2 case studies quickly. So I've got enough time. So what we found was, when we started this project, and it's much similar to what Joe was saying, is that you had to bring the institution on this movement, this sort of journey of change. It's one thing to sort of impart digital preservation tasks and activities. It's another thing to sort of elicit a different way of thinking about an object that sort of moves from, again, the work on a trolley that goes on a wall to this USB stick that becomes this immersive experience. And so what we did was we focused in on the cataloguing, so the database that we use in order to describe our works. And as you can imagine, super 1990s cataloguing system, interface and everything. And it really focused on physical object parts. And so what we sought to do was really look at how we could bring this language of intangible into this static traditional database, so we could start to get everybody thinking and moving towards accepting ephemeral parameters in their everyday language. So if we look at this artwork, and I won't get too carried away, I do get carried away with this one. So this is Anthony Mccall's Meeting You Halfway. So what I've shown you here is, so what the work is, it is a room that you walk into, and it's a blaring beam of projector light, and in that there's haze, and you sort of walk in it and walk around it, and it kind of just moves, and then every 3 minutes and 33 seconds it blasts a beam of like a shot of haze, and then it sort of becomes all mottled and alive, and then it relaxes again. So the reason why that's important is that's a part of my job, to know that every 3 minutes and 33 seconds everything changes, and so therefore your experience of standing in that space changes as well. So trying to find ways to document that is actually quite interesting. But to sort of look at the cataloguing, when we received the work for acquisition, what we got was projector and haze machine, and we hadn't even bought the haze machine, and that's what existed in our database. So when we went to install the work, there was this huge issue with understanding what it was that we were trying to create or perform. And so what we realized was, like, they hadn't even accounted for the digital projection that was integral in order to make the haze move. So what we've ended up doing is create these variable parts. So the idea that what we need is, the projector and the haze machine isn't the work. It's a piece of equipment that is used in order to facilitate the work. And there's also that scary thing when you put something in a database that's a piece of equipment and you say, this is the thing, that in 20 years from now, that's the thing you have to pay money to conserve and make sure it's preserved forever. So we took that out of the database and we sort of moved that into an auxiliary area where we could record it accurately, but we didn't elevate it to the status of the grand art object. And so what became the work was 2 variable components, as we refer to them, which was the single channel digital projection, which is an exhibition file which is made and destroyed at the time of exhibition with our masters stored safely off-site, and the idea of haze, the actual action of haze. So for a registrar who's used to trolley, frame, wall, this is a totally different game. So this one is a sort of similar in the fact that you have what we received with this work. It's Gary Hill's Liminal Objects 8. And we acquired this work. It's like a 1980s CRT, so a cathode ray tube. Apart from the fact that we're looking at obsolete tech here, like there's one dude left in New South Wales who knows how to regas a CRT. Apart from it does not meet WH&S Australian standards at the back there, like one.
So you need willing as well.
Willing as well. And, so you've got this CRT to try to get that to function. The work was originally made, as you can see here, on a laser disc. Before it came to us, it had been migrated onto a Betacam, so it went to digital tech. But if we're going to show it, we're going to show it as a digital file. So what we've had to do here for our audiences is record this progression of data and the migration of files. It was really a strong point of mine that I didn't want an audience to be looking at a work and to read the little label text and be like, oh, single channel digital video, when you can obviously tell it's a 16 millimeter, or if you're a dork, you're like me, you can tell it's a 16 millimeter film because you can see the scratches, but hold on, there's like weird analog fuzz at the bottom, so I know it was a VHS, but I can see a dead pixel in the corner. Like, what? And you would never do that for a traditional artwork. You would never say, hey, yo, this painting's a marble sculpture. So there's also this idea of trying to elevate the materials and say that the artists who choose to use these materials to make these works are making decisions that is important to record for posterity, for historical research, that maybe we don't think much of these, third-party proprietary Sony screens now, but in 50 years' time, that may be important. And the artists I interview have, stated that. I know now TV More used mini DV cams from the period of 1994 to 1998 exclusively. Like, that's hugely important information for a researcher. And also, you wouldn't ignore that for any other kind of artwork. So, just really to sort of sum up, I guess what we've done as an institution in this area of cataloguing is by rethinking and applying it to these time-based artworks, we've kind of by introducing the right terminology and systems into a old school 20th century database, we've impacted the central nervous system of the gallery. Everybody uses this database to understand it. And so we've been able to provide at a most foundational level a framework that supports day-to-day activities and tasks and communication. And so the impact of that is staff now feel that they have the language to communicate these things to each other. And it's alleviated much of the frustration and confusion that we previously felt when dealing with these works. And it did mark a significant step forward as an institution in taking the time to work with artists to determine what is the artwork, rather than just accepting what was out of the box by the vendor. I might leave it at that.